update. Well, let's hear from the United States now, and Andrea Kendall-Taylor is a former senior intelligence officer specializing in Russia, who is now director of the Transatlantic Security Program at the Center for a New American Security, a national think tank in Washington. Andrea, things moving at quite a pace, aren't they? Can you quickly analyze the gravity of the situation as you see it?
Yeah, I think we have entered this really critical window, and certainly that is what the U.S. announcements were underscoring today. And I think it's so critical because finally we're seeing a convergence of what's been happening in the military space with what's happening politically. You know, for some time, Putin has tried to reassure the West that he doesn't want a war in Ukraine, that he's withdrawing forces from the border. With his speech on Monday, that has all changed. He reiterated his view that he doesn't think Ukraine has a right to exist. He then, in very short order, went on to recognize the independence of those territories, is moving Russian forces into those regions, into the region. He now has legislative approval to use force outside of Russia. He continues to make these very extreme demands on Ukraine, saying that they now must recognize Russia's right to Crimea and demilitarize. So I think that's really, you know, the key here is that, of course, we have the 190,000 Russian forces on the border. And all of a sudden, it's a convergence of this military movement along with the political statements that suggests that we really are getting quite close to the major military incursion that the United States and the UK have been warning about.
Tonight very passionately to Russian people in Russian, saying that President Putin wouldn't take his call.
Yeah, and I think it was an impassioned speech. It was a very moving speech. It was, you know, a last-ditch effort, I think, here to avert crisis as the tension really grows inside Ukraine. I think the really important point that his speech underscores, though, is that this is a war of choice. This is up to one man. We saw, you know, very much a charade on Monday of Putin kind of trotting out his National Security Council in front of the cameras, having each individual have to give their approval or their consensus about the need to declare the regions independent. What that underscored to me was that there is no one now in President Putin's inner circle who can constrain him and who would be willing to introduce ideas that are even at odds with the way Putin thinks. And that's extremely dangerous. And so, again, this is a war of choice. Russia is not under threat from Ukraine. NATO does not threaten Russia. And so this is the choice, I think, very much of one man.
Do you agree with Antony Blinken's assessment? He says, obviously, he thinks that Russia will invade Ukraine before the night is over, which is a pretty dramatic and extreme claim. And also, where do you think he'll have got that intelligence from?
Well, again, I think we heard Secretary Blinken say we don't know for sure exactly the timing of the beginning of any invasion. And but I do think the point is that, you know, it is in the next 24 to 48 hours. The U.S. intelligence community, along with the UK, has been doing amazing work in terms of their collection capacity to issue warnings about what Russia is doing, to take away the element of surprise, to make it very hard for Russia to control the narrative about what's happening here. So I think, you know, after 9/11, you know, we were caught flat-footed in 2014. Our intelligence community wasn't necessarily postured in a way that gave us visibility into what Russia was doing. 2014 was a really important wake-up call. And so we are in a much better position this time around. The allies are much more prepared going into what will be, I think, a really, you know, upsetting period.
Based on everything you've seen today and heard today, do you think there's any diplomatic way out of this now?
You know, it saddens me to say no. I just, you know, based on what we're hearing Putin say, that he, again, believes that Ukraine doesn't have a right to exist, these long-standing grievances that he harbors, the way that the troops are kind of moving into these very prepared positions, that combined with the fact that, you know, Secretary Blinken, because of the recognition of the regions in the Donbass, canceled his meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. The French have canceled their upcoming visits. And so there's not even any diplomacy on the horizon. And so to me, I think we're just waiting for that last foot to drop. You can feel the tension. It's palpable in Ukraine. And so unfortunately, I think, you know, again, we're just moving towards this really unfortunate period.
Yeah, very, very serious situation. Andrea Kendall-Taylor, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date there from Washington.